I'm not unsympathetic to the views of the technology industry because I'm part of it. And a lot of people don't realize that. Until I did this talk at the San Francisco Music Tech Convention in 2012, entitled Meet the New Boss versus the Old Boss, in which I analyzed the share of revenue that goes to artists under the new digital paradigm versus the old one. I was usually regarded as a pro-tech artist. And I did this talk, it was very controversial, and then sort of since then I sort of spun off onto sort of this pro-artist rights in the digital world. So this new ad-supported piracy is kind of the 1950s music business, except you don't get the catalog, okay? Best way to describe it. And in fact, it's actually worse than that. Cadillac, which is made by Chevrolet, actually helps exploit you. So the Cadillac actually attacks you now. This is GrooveShark. I guess they didn't realize that GrooveShark is an unlicensed website. That Google is not necessarily the worst of the offenders. They're much lower down in the online ad ecosystem as far as being the bad guys. So anyway, first of all, free music, books, and films are highly monetized. They're monetized in two ways. You can pay for faster downloads, premium downloads using MasterCard, Visa, American Express, PayPal, etc. We've done a pretty good job just in the last year. A lot of that's been cut off. But they're also advertised, they're also highly monetized through advertising, okay? And that's Microsoft's properties, that's Yahoo's properties, it's hundreds of different online advertisers, okay? One of them is DoubleClick and another Google property, Google Ad Services. In general, though, the online advertising world is pretty out of control. My main issue with this is there's sort of a supply and demand on advertising out there. And if the future of music really is access to songs rather than owning as many as we do nowadays, right? Those services are all advertising supported, and they're competing with these illegitimate sites for those ads. Sales of music are totally concentrated in the hits. Almost all of the page views are concentrated in the hits, like the top 2 or 3% of the major labels' songs, right? And the piracy websites that are ad-supported also reflect that as well. They're, how the internet likes kind of one or two of everything. You've got iTunes with 80% of the market, and you've got Amazon with 13%, and eMusic with 1% or something like that. Please don't quote me on those figures. I'm just guessing off the top of my head. But I think you knock the funding source for these major sites offline. It's a nudge to the consumer towards the legitimate sites.
I think it's important to recognise that this is a huge industry. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of players here. And it's not always obvious to those players where that advertising is going. So there's a huge amount of work that we're undertaking to try and address that issue, as well as the underlying copyright issue as well. But obviously, there are concerns that this is not a linear process. We're not talking about the advertiser and then the endpoint publisher. We're talking about lots of people in between. So there are concerns about how that advertising is going to, where it's going to appear, basically. So it's something that we are addressing, but it's not something that's easy to address. There's no kind of one-size-fits-all. All of these different players operate in very different ways. Sometimes, like a network, for example, will know exactly what sites they're operating on. There might be other players who give their system over to an advertiser to choose exactly where they want to go. So in some cases, people have complete control. In some cases, they don't. In some cases, they don't. So it's quite difficult to kind of regulate the industry. I don't think this is a way of people hiding behind things. I think. Okay, so if we look at advertisers, it's their prerogative to say, I don't want to appear against certain types of content. And when it comes to things like pornography, hate crime, that, you know, and horrible stuff that's out there, it's quite difficult, it's quite easy rather to identify what that kind of content is. Where there's been a difficulty, particularly here in the UK, is actually what is an infringing site. And we've been working with rights holders to say, okay, so we as an industry, we don't know necessarily what an infringing site is, what it looks like. And these sites are constantly changing. You know, they're doing all kinds of different things that, you know, you take one down that will pop up somewhere else. So let's actually work together. So if the rights holders can come to us and they can tell industry what is infringing, then advertisers and the agencies and all the ad tech businesses can do something about it. If it's identified, then they can do something about it.
I agree with most of what you've said, I think. I mean, I think it has to be, it does seem to me to be an entirely sensible way to tackle piracy, is to recognise the fact that most of the people doing piracy, they're not some guy in his bedroom altruistically sharing music with his best friends. It's people making money out of piracy, and these are often quite big businesses. Some of them, we did a piece of research last year in the UK with PRS for music, and some of these sites have 2 million visitors regularly, and they're not doing a bad business on advertising. So I think it does make sense, rather than kind of trying to block websites, to actually go after the businesses, or rather than trying to penalise consumers, to go after the businesses. So I think you know, the substance of what Dave's talking about is definitely the right way forward. Now so on our products, we work hard to try and remove advertising from infringing content. And last month we took down 20 million, removed 20 million URLs from our search index. So if a rights holder says to us, that page has got my content on, and that's not licensed, then we'll take it out of our search engine. So we're doing that at a rate of 20 million a month, and that's up from around 200,000 about 18 months ago. So we're seeing this huge rise in the number of takedown requests. And I think you know, there's two ways in which you can tackle advertising. One, as kind of Dave has said, really, is you start with the brands. So if you go to Coca-Cola or Apple or whoever, and you know, part of this is about raising awareness and saying, getting them to, when they come to Google or to any other advertising agency, getting them to say, I'm going to be really clear with you, I don't want you to put advertising on any of these sites, I do want you to put advertising on these sites. Then if they're the ones with the money, right? I mean, Google gets its money from the advertisers. That's where our money comes from. And if they come to us and say, this is what we want, then that's what they get. That's what we do really well, is we serve them the ads that they want. And I think kind of there's a double benefit there, that if you can take the money away from those pirate sites, and if you can, you know, and if the option to them is they want to hit the eyeballs of men age 18 to 34 with an interest in music, and they think that audience is Pirate Bay or Mega Upload, but then they still want to spend the money, and they've come to you and said, I don't want to put it on Pirate Bay or Mega Upload, then hopefully you can redirect it and say, well, if you still want to reach this audience, you want to reach a music-loving audience in this age, then here's all these legal sites. And if you do that, starting with the brand saying, this is what I want, then the whole industry follows that lead. So part of it is you can do it kind of before the ad is served in that way, as Dave suggests. I think the other way you do it is after, which is once an ad has been served on the site, you've got to, you know, the responsibility on companies like Google is if you're serving an ad on a site which has infringing content, then your obligation is to take it down. And we're doing that at record levels. But you know, we know that we can do more, and we'll keep doing more. But I think this model of going after the pirate business is a sensible one. And I think it's progress in the way in which our various industries are working together.